please welcome the incredible Kristina Mand-Lakhiani.
Hello. Yeah, nice to thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. So, I was just saying before we press record that you are one of the only guests that I've had on here twice. You were on the show a year and a bit ago, and now you have this
Thank you.
book that you're publishing.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. It's actually really an honor, and yes, so many things have happened since then. The book is coming out.
I know. That's amazing. Okay, so let's jump into a couple quick questions, but I really want to get to the juiciness of this book because I'm not, it's interesting. I'm not really one opted to have a guest on twice, but when I saw the title of the book and the stuff that you were working on, I was like, we need this. And I'm so excited to talk about it. So, first of all, I'd love to know, where are you from?
I am, well, I live in Estonia right now. Where I'm from is a little more complicated question because in my long life I've lived in in many countries on three continents, and very long chunk of my life I've lived in Asia. So I guess I'm a mixture of European and Asian. And I was born in Soviet Union and raised in Soviet Union, so that adds another complexity. I'm from planet Earth.
Wow. You're perfect. Us too. Welcome. Planet Earth. I love it. Okay, so what is the name of your book and what inspired you to write it?
So my book is called Becoming Flawesome, and the inspiration, whenever we do something, we sometimes think it's one spark, like like the dynamite, you like spark the cord and it will go off. But I think in life there are a lot of things which actually coincide and can you push you in that direction. So on one side, of course, having been in personal growth for 20 years, having to write a book was almost like this default regime. Like when you're born, you're by default supposed to be successful and get married, have children, and all that stuff. So similarly, in my business, writing a book was something which was taken for granted. But then also I'm an obstinate person, so of course that wouldn't have convinced me completely. And I would say that the most important ingredient was that my message had matured. I just felt that I had something to say, and I felt that it was so ripe that I couldn't hold it back. I know, as a mother, you would understand that when a baby is coming, the baby is coming. You can't decide that it's not coming. So that was the same with the book, and the final drop was COVID confinement. I was stuck alone at home, and that was the best thing I could do. Sit down and finally write it all out of myself.
Wow. Okay, so you wrote it during, I guess, lockdown, during COVID.
Yes, yeah, it was.
Wow. That's so interesting. I feel like there's a lot of people that have written books in those moments. And for me, I don't know for you, but I felt really inspired in that time because you couldn't go anywhere. So it's almost like you not only physically had more capacity, but there was more mental capacity too, as long as you were healthy and safe during these times. Um, so, so the term "flossom" is in the title of your book. What does that mean to you?
I like that you qualified to me because I think that flawsome, like so many things, like authentic, for example, should mean something very personal to every single person because what makes me flawsome might not be truth for other people. So, in my opinion, flawsome is recognizing your own imperfections and and also being able to see them as something that makes you unique and valuable and that holds the key to your main strengths maybe even. So Flawsome is about recognizing your imperfections and reveling in that recognition.
And why was it important for you to really write a book around this specific topic?
I actually wasn't writing a book about being flawsome. I was writing a book about coming back to yourself. And flawsome was a word I discovered on the internet sometime later. So the book was pretty much written, and I had a lot of working. I had a brainstorming sheet with different titles, and the working title was something around coming back to yourself. So Flawesome just seemed like the right word. It appeared in the right time, and I adopted it since nobody else wanted it. But why I thought it was important, I think we sometimes get lost in our aspirations. Our life is quite complex. Say 100, 200 years ago, it was a little more simple. Well, we didn't live this long as well, and we didn't have a lot of options and choices. But nowadays, we very often, out of best intentions, we do the things that actually lead us to the dead end. So, of course, my own story was an inspiration to that. I am, like so many other people, perfectionist, ambitious person who has to go and do stuff. So at the age of 40, I had done all the right things out of best intentions, because I knew what it means to do the right things. So I had a business which was successful, a job which I enjoyed, which I could be proud of, children, husband, travels, whatever you need to be considered a success. Except one thing, I felt something was missing, and it was a little bit of a shock to me at the age of 40 when I realized that the missing piece was myself. There was my body doing actively my life, but I just couldn't remember what it was to be me, who I was. So I think a lot of people end up in that situation at some point in their life, because we get so fascinated with our goals, and we get so passionate about achieving them, that we don't even slow down to ask ourselves, am I running? I'm running at full speed, but am I running in the right direction?
Right. Oh my gosh. I've been doing a lot of spiritual inner work on this. I went through this crazy time of like being religious and then not at all, being an atheist. Now coming back to God and learning about all this faith and spirituality. And the biggest chunk of that was that exactly what you just said, was that the last 10 years of my life was a lot about being a parent. And there was like these cultural expectations of what was needed of me. And then there's things that I wanted to pursue, but what I wanted of me should never come first. And what that did was did a disservice for myself, but my family and community. And so learning now, relearning the habits and the mindsets of actually putting me first and being me fully, unapologetically, not only makes me a better parent, partner, community member, entrepreneur, but it makes me me. And I have more energy. I'm happier. I show up in the world in ways that I know I'm supposed to. And yes, I'm Flawesome. And rediscovering myself in all of this has been the most fascinating journey. I stopped caring what other people think. Obviously, I care a little bit sometimes, but I don't care that you might not like my industry or have disrespect for my industry. I don't care if you have some judgment about the way I live my life or how I parent, because I know I'm doing me the best I can. And it's different than maybe how other people do it. But also an understanding that people come with judgment because of how they've been conditioned and because of their trauma. And so it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just that they see the world differently and they expect you to be doing what they do because that's all they know. And all of this to say that all of this affects us as women. And when we come back to ourselves in ways that we never thought possible, holy moly, we can change the world. Does that sound
Well,
about
it
right?
affects it affects women and men equally. It's just that somehow women seem to be one step ahead. And I'm not saying it with disrespect to men. I think it's because men are sometimes so busy with the things that they think are the real problems. And that's the paradigm in our society, which is a little bit which is starting to take us down. We think that our real problems are, let's say, economic crisis and things like that. Especially it's true of people who consider themselves very pragmatic. These are my favorite audience, and they believe, a lot of people who haven't discovered the wonderful world of transformation and personal growth, a lot of them think that such topics as, being true to yourself or being happy for that matter, or loving yourself are soft. and wishy-washy, and they don't have time for that nonsense. Forgetting, and this is something which I think our society needs to wake up to, forgetting that there is a correlation between your level of happiness and your success, but it goes not in the way that we are used to think or hope. We somewhere deep inside we know that being successful is not going to make you feel better about yourself, is not going to make you feel happier, is not going to make your life much better. But we still go down that slippery slope, putting pragmatic goals above everything else, without realizing that there's only one way how this connection works, this correlation works. You're much more likely to achieve much more and to be much more useful to the society if you're actually doing it in the good state and if you take care of your well-being.
Yeah, so true. And it's more enjoyable. You make a bigger
That's
impact too.
no question about that. Talking about enjoyability, yeah, that's so right. We sometimes say that, oh, real life catches up, and then you're not so bright-eyed, and you start feeling the pressure. But what came first? Are you feeling, are you having problems because you're miserable? Or are you miserable because you're having problems? Or maybe your problems wouldn't be such a big deal if you actually were happy, content, and at peace with yourself. Because cognitively, we all understand that challenges is what makes us grow. Challenge is a natural part of life. But yet, somehow, the moment when we lose that spark, these challenges start killing us.
And then we think life is happening to us and not for us, right?
That's a very philosophical remark. Yes, I would say I do have an exercise even that's called "Life is happening for you, not to you." But I think it would be a little bit of a leap sometimes to go into that. And also, there are things in life that happen to us which are not. Which we didn't pick, and which might not be, there may be nothing, no silver lining. But in that case, I actually love a quote from Lord of the Rings by Gandalf. He says, "You don't always get to pick the times when you live, but you always get to pick what you're going to do with the times that you're given."
That's true. So true. Okay, so you talk about certain formulas in this book. What are they, and how did you come up with them?
So the book is a journey back to yourself, and that journey takes you through a few stages of first getting to know yourself, really, and that's actually not as straightforward as it may seem, because if you understand how brain works, you would know that we all live in a very elaborate illusion. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle. So through knowing yourself, to accepting yourself the way you are, to actually learning to not just accept yourself with your flaws and imperfections, but turn those flaws and imperfections to your advantage, and to actually learn to love yourself. But that process naturally requires certain skills. So I start with the most fundamental skill in any personal growth and transformation, which is the habit of awareness, of just being awake in your life, and not being an autopilot. But that's the foundational skill for any kind of transformation. Now, when it comes to self-discovery, then one of the most important lifesavers for you would be learning how to deal with unpleasant emotions. Because pain is inevitable, it's going to happen, especially if you want to change anything about your life. Actually, if you don't want to change anything about your life, pain is still inevitable, whether you like it or not. So, and it's a skill which is very straightforward, very scientific. So I have created a formula, a very simple 7-step formula to work with your unpleasant emotions. And then once I give out those band-aids and the first aid kind of tools, we go into the heavy work, into honesty, self-honesty, into finding kindness and compassion towards yourself, and to being courageous to actually change things. But before that, yes, we need some skills to cope with the changes.
Yes. And how did you come up with these formulas?
Uh, usually, I can, I'm a little bit like, I think I saw the quote by Einstein where he says that a lot of our knowledge or theoretical knowledge has to come from actual experience, from empirical life. So it is a combination of two. Of course, I experience life and I try to find solutions to life, but then before I come up with a solution, I want to. The geek in me wants to see, is that true? Is that a fact? What, like, let's say I make a conclusion about life, so I want to know, is that a general rule or is it a Christina fact? So the formula happened with me experimenting with certain things, with having questions, with researching the topic of emotions and psychology, of course, and based on that, coming up with a system that works for me, a system that would be generic enough to work in different kind of situations, because we don't always know the situations is going to happen. But you need to have a system that will alleviate both, say, grief and intense fear and I don't know, shame, for example, right? So it's a work in progress. Sometimes I shift things around, but the way it is now, I've been using it for a few years, and it helps me, and I hope it helps people.
Right. And so you've been using this. How would you say you've transformed in applying these formulas to your life?
I like to consider myself a work in progress, and I think I think we all are, hopefully, because the moment when you don't change, it's the end. And I still hope there's so much to come in life, but for me, it's like learning, for example, rituals for hygiene. Just because you've taken a good shower doesn't mean you don't need it the next day. So for me, these formulas are also part of that journey. Life happens, and then as life happens, you need you need to rediscover yourself again. You need to forgive yourself again. You need to accept yourself again. You need to find out who you are in the first place. So how I have transformed, I just enjoy life as it comes, and I don't take it as dramatically as I used to. I believe that I've become more tolerant of other people's quirks and imperfections because I've learned to accept my own. Well, I'm learning along the way, so it's a little hard to talk about that as a finished product. But if anything, life is much more enjoyable. There was this quote which I found when we were all in lockdown about happiness. It says, "Happy are those who are on a detour and can still enjoy the scenery." And that's probably the biggest transformation for me, that I've learned to enjoy the scenery even when I'm on a detour.
I feel like that's when you find the most magical places, like metaphorically or not. It's like you find this little hole in the wall coffee shop that you end up being your favorite coffee in the world. Or you end
Yeah,
up getting to see views from a mountain or a castle you never thought possible because they're not supposed to be there. That wasn't in the plan. It's not where we're supposed to go,
that's yeah,
right? And no one talks
exactly.
about it because no one's been there. And now you can go back and you can be like, wow, we found this place because we took a detour. And now that detour created such joy in our life we didn't expect. Took us longer to get to our destination, but it doesn't matter because the memories that came from it, because it's about the journey, right? And you say you're a work in
Well, if
progress because it's the journey.
yeah, because the destination is the same for all of us ultimately, and I'm not in a rush yet.
No, me neither. Oh, me neither. Well, my husband and I went out for dinner last night, and we got really deep into talking about God and all this stuff. And like he was a bigger, stronger believer than I was for a while, and probably still to this day. And I started asking him questions that I know he didn't know with conviction the answer to, but he needed to come up with an answer. And so it was so inquisitive about it. But his understanding is that we don't really know what's on the other side. We have assumptions. Everyone has probably different perspectives, but that it really can't be so terrible if we're going to all end up there, right? Can't be.
I, I'm,
And
s-
if it's,
I'm
if it was
sure it's
so
not
good,
terrible.
good, and there's proof, well, if it's so good that, and there's so proof that it's better, then it's like, why aren't we all going there now? um, but it's really interesting, and I feel like fear is one thing. You talked about fear and shame and all these things that are just natural feelings for us that are needed to like question ourselves and understand where our roadblocks are, our traumas are, where the triggers that are coming up, because we all have different experiences. We can face the exact same circumstance and walk away with a totally different experience. Some take it as a lesson, some take it as a reason to be a victim.
It's actually a very deep observation, and having been in personal growth, I know that we sometimes overestimate the value of our big decisions and completely underestimate the value of our little daily decisions that we take on regularly. And these decisions are very often run by our habits and rituals and traditions and, well, just patterns. Even most of them are actually subconscious. And the proof to that would be if you think of two people who have taken similar big decisions in their life. It might be, someone who lives on your street, does a similar kind of job, has the same kind of family setup, but your living experience will be completely different because our life is made up of those little things. Somebody says something to you. What is the story you tell yourself in your head? How do you react to that? What do you feel? How do you interpret your feelings? How do you interpret the event? And that happens on a daily basis. It happens so many times. When you wake up in the morning, you look at yourself in the mirror. Have you noticed what's your self-talk? Depending on what's going on in the background, your life may be maybe 180 degrees different kind of experience.
Let me tell you an example. I don't want to apologize for the greatness of this opportunity because I was actually challenged on this yesterday. So this summer, very soon, we're going to Croatia. And we have a beautiful boat that we're sharing with, a handful of other families, and we're sailing the ocean in Croatia for a week. I'm super excited about this. However, what came up is in the logistics and the flights to get there. So we pretty much have to do a red eye, which is fine. We've done it this past fall. We went to Spain and Portugal with our kids. They're 9 and 10 years old. And we did first class, lay down, beautiful experience. We were super jet lagged. And so it took us a couple days to recover. I was the worst one to recover. You take away my sleep and I turn into a monster. But then it happened that my husband can't fly with us. So we got to do this red eye alone with my kids to Croatia. And initially when it was mentioned that to me, I was like, that's fine. I'm like, that's totally fine. My kids are very capable. And I actually am excited for the experience to travel with them, just mummy time and the boys. But on the other side, there was this story that popped up that was like, but society expects you to be stressed because you're a mom traveling alone with their kids. Travel is stressful enough, and you're doing it alone with your kids, doing a red eye across the ocean. So you're actually not supposed to be okay with this. You're supposed to be stressed. And so I'm sitting there feeling excited about it, but my story in my head was like, no, Renee, you have to be anxious about this. And then all of a sudden, I got a pain in my chest. Like I was anxious about this trip.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I allow these stories to tell me how I'm going to physically feel, given the beautiful situation of where I can travel first class with my kids across the ocean to go to Croatia to be on a yacht? But the story was like, no, you're not supposed to be okay with this. And so I allowed the story to live in my head. It's a lot. And that's just one example. And you think about all the little things that happen in a day, all the little things that come up.
Yeah. Since I've lived in Asia and Europe, so I've done this super long journeys, and I can tell you that the jet lag going east is always much harder than going west, because going west your day just stretches. So it's not very fortunate to go there. But when it comes to your experience, you know that there is a lot of research that proves that even our experience of emotions is very often defined by the society where we grow up. For example, there are emotions which are very specific to certain cultures, and other cultures might not understand them. There's a lot of research on the emotion of jealousy, for example, around the world. And apparently societies which are a little bit more traditional in their, gender role division, they seem to be taking jealousy harder. more dramatically than more egalitarian societies. Or my favorite example is actually the feeling of nostalgia, the emotion of nostalgia, which nowadays is often romanticized as this good feeling. Some authors even suggest that you might you might slip into nostalgia if you want to feel better and happier, which is a very funny thing, because the first time that when nostalgia was mentioned, sometime 18 something in the middle of the 19th century, it was considered a disease which kills. It was a lethal, lethal kind of emotion. So society does tell us how to experience emotions. We read it off society and we experience them in exactly that way people around us experience them. So for us parents, it's quite a burden to understand that actually, however we freak out, we teach our kids to freak out the same way. And I don't want to scare off the parents, but whatever we do, they're watching you.
Oh, I know. I see it when I see my oldest son talking to my youngest and trying to discipline him. I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. I don't like that. Now, here's the thing is we can reflect on this. We can be aware of it, reflect on it, and also we can change it. So it's not just because now my kids are talking like me and disciplining like me and I don't like it. It's not permanent. And we have the ability to change that and to change it for ourselves and for our kids. It has to start now. And you have to be committed to it, committed to that change. And, going back to those little decisions you make in a day that create stress, like I'm talking about traveling alone across the ocean with my kids. But even when I reflect on these other stories, like this morning, the story of I got busy doing stuff for work that I got to the point in the morning that it ended up hijacking what I normally do is make my kids a beautiful, healthy breakfast. And I realized I was running late and I was like, oh, geez, boys, can you just make your own breakfast? Just have a bowl of cereal. So instead of it being just have a bowl of cereal, then I went through the story of you're not a good mother because you didn't show up like you always do. Now they're going to eat a sugary bowl of Cheerios for breakfast and not have good sustenance to go to school. Like I couldn't just, it couldn't just be, and everyone was happy and everyone was fine. But no, now I'm reflecting back on, I have to adjust my day now to go back to that routine because I'm not a good mother unless I do that for them.
But
It's
you know what? I
fascinating.
would actually argue that you are a good mother. For you know why? Because at a very early age, you teach your kids executive functioning. They can take care of themselves. This is the skill that a lot of contemporary kids are missing because of the way we parent. So I wonder if you are not a good mother. No, I think you are. It's how you look at it. What's your value? Who says that? I actually always argue with my mom because we moved to Estonia in the middle of the COVID, so I live with my mom right now and my dad. And I always argue with her when she tells my kids to leave the plate on the table, and she's like, "Oh, I'll take care of that." I'm like, "Mom, no." So what's your value? For me, the biggest value is to actually to enjoy life with my kids. Do I want to be stressed? We often do things together because it's more fun. And I use them for help. They say lazy mothers have the most diligent kids.
No, I get it. And it's so true. It's 100% true. So part of this is understanding that that was a gift for them too, and they were fine about it. They didn't like drag their heels and be like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." They just did it and it got done, and it was a little bit messier than I expected, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It was nothing, and like it's true about teaching them that lesson, and so breaking free from now. For me, I think I'm more flawesome because where it was the issue this morning is when doubting myself of my ability to be a good mother. And really, why does it matter if I think I'm a good mother or not? Good is comparable to who, right? I feel it's like self-defined. If your kids are alive and healthy, I feel like you've done a good job. At the end of the day, if they're good, kind people. And we always beat ourselves up over this all the time.
But what I was saying is that does it even matter if you're a good mother? Because what does good mean? How do you define good? What is good after all? For me, a good parent is the parent who has a very strong, trusting relationship with their children. It has nothing to do with how clean the house is. Yeah, I was saying is what does it matter to be a good mother, and what does it even mean? We very seldom give definitions to things that we use so freely, like happiness, self-love. We use the same words, but we don't always mean the same things. So in my opinion, maybe for someone, good mother means is the person who has immaculate house and always like perfectly healthy lunchbox prepared. For me, a good mother is the mother who has a connection with her children, whose children actually trust her with everything, who has time to hear them, to listen to them. And that's what makes a mother good for me. So I think it's more about the values that you have, and if we move our attention from those generic words, success, happiness, good mother, good friend, whatever, into essence of things, into our values, it becomes much easier. You stop being upset about things which don't matter. Ultimately, they don't.
Wow, that was perfect. Yeah. So, one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
Wild. The first thing that comes to my mind is, of course, dancing on a table in the nightclub, which I had done a share of. but but from the height of my 45 years, I would say I would give it the meaning of being as close to your natural self as you can be.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, where can people go to find your book online?
So the best place to find to get a book is from Mindvalley website. Of course, I'm a co-founder of Mindvalley, so it's on mindvalley.com/books/flawesome. It's books because we have a few. And why say that's the best place to get it is because it comes with a bonus, a program on self-love, which I have recorded specially to accompany the book. But mid-June is going to be in the bookshelves of all the major bookstores in the US, and in July it's going to be in the airports. So you'll find it everywhere for a while.
That's exciting. I'm so excited for you and this book, Becoming Flawesome. So, Kristina, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry for all the internet troubles.